Now joining us on the line from Soldier On Foundation CEO John Bale. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Hey, John. Glad that you could join us. We weren't sure if you're being held up, and I understand you were in a meeting before the interview.
Yes, very early.
Well, happy Tuesday to you.
Thank you very much.
Can you give us a little bit of info on what you do?
Yeah, sure. So Soldier On was started last year. A very young organisation. I guess from my perspective, I'm under 30, and most of the people actually involved in Soldier On are, so we're quite a contemporary organisation as well. One of my best friends was killed in a improvised explosive device in 2008 in Afghanistan, and the support that his family received was phenomenal when he was brought back to Australia. Unfortunately, there were 3 gentlemen that were wounded in the same incident, and the level of community support around them just didn't exist. There was really no public awareness, and unfortunately not the same level of support. And that shocked me, and it was something that I wanted to rectify, as had been done in the UK and the US. Organisations over there like Help for Heroes and the Wounded Warrior Project done a fantastic job of connecting the community to those who've gone overseas. And you may not agree with the politics of where we've been, but ultimately every individual who has been overseas in Afghanistan or Iraq or East Timor is going to eventually have to come back into society proper, and I think that we in society need to be able to help them transition into that. So that's what Soldier On is about, is reintegrating those who've served and been wounded back into society, and we do that through a number of steps. The first is to enhance rehabilitation to help them get better, then to inspire themselves and inspire others by doing amazing activities. This year we've got 2 soldiers going to the South Pole with Prince Harry to race against him. So a Commonwealth team, a UK team, and a US team racing
Wow.
each other to the South Pole. And then ultimately the end state of Soldier On is to empower the individual through employment and an empowering job that allows them to put food on the table at home and to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm contributing back into society.
Okay, so why might it be so difficult for soldiers who are returning from situations like in Iraq and East Timor? Why do the people like that require that kind of support?
Mostly because veterans, I guess, are very good at looking after their own, and the military is such a tight club that it's difficult often to transition out of it. In some instances, you do become a little bit institutionalised, and to step outside, it does feel like entering the workforce for the first time, really, and a lot of those safeguards that you once had have been stripped away. Now, if you're wounded on top of that, there's a lot of other issues, especially if it's a mental wound. When I say wound, I don't just mean physical wound. I also mean those who have been psychologically wounded, such as post-traumatic stress or anxiety or depression, etc., which can come out of people's operational service. You add that on top, and just going into a job interview is sometimes a really daunting thing. So that's what we're trying to break down, those barriers.
Yes, I can understand. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos, documentaries based on this in the US, where it's, I guess, what a lot of these soldiers, like you mentioned, is very institutionalized, and there is a brotherhood that will never be able to be experienced or explained to anyone else who has not really experienced it themselves. And this one gentleman was saying that, at one point you're pushed to the limits in your life where you are overcoming something, even if it's you are carrying a ruck that's 80 kilos and you're dehydrated and you're hiking up a hill, and even that in one day, it being part of your operation just to do a patrol is beyond human. And then having to risk your life in that same instance, and then coming back and trying to find a job where you're selling mattresses at a retail store. And then just thinking, where's my life balance gone? Where at one point I was living to the extreme of my life and giving myself everything I had, and then having to then come to a point where I'm now trying to make ends meet, and no one understands why it's not working for me.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a really important point there, and that's the adrenaline of what are these, of what being in the military is in some instances. No, it's not all like that, but you get those certain highs, and sometimes you just don't get the same highs being back in society, and that's one of the aspects that Soldier On's trying to achieve, is give individuals the opportunity to be able to, in a safe environment, of course, do things that get them back out and allow them to taste that camaraderie as well. The South Pole, it's not just about 2 guys going, it's a total of 12 wounded soldiers are going to be from all of these countries going together. We just had 11 Australians go over to Canada, where they met up with 180 other wounded soldiers from the US and UK, and obviously Canada. And in that instance, it was about fishing, and it wasn't those high adrenaline activities. We do those at the same time, but it's just that camaraderie and being able to talk about that stuff as well, because often you can't talk about, back when I was on a patrol carrying, my own body weight on my back. You say that to people who haven't done it, and they often don't get it, whereas you say it to someone who's been there, and straight away that barrier is broken. You can talk on common ground. For sure.
So you mentioned the Canada trip and also the one down to the South Pole. What sorts of other things have Soldier On achieved for wounded soldiers returning back to Australia?
We've done a number of those activities. So I guess the thing that I think we've done in a short amount of time is really create awareness around being wounded, and the fact that there are a number of individuals who have been wounded and a number of individuals who have been psychologically wounded, some of them who still haven't, I guess, come out and spoken to either their family or their friends about it, and they're carrying those invisible wounds to themselves. I think that's one of the biggest things that Soldier On has really achieved, is to identify that there is an opportunity for the Australian community to be a part of this, and through our fundraising mechanism, which is majoritively individuals getting involved in activities with wounded soldiers, it's really starting to break down those barriers. So we've done, as I said, lots of activities like City to Surf and all of those marathons and running activities and mountain biking, all that other kind of stuff. And it allows for anyone in society to get in there, raise money for Soldier On, but at the same time do it next to a wounded guy, and you say, hey, what's your story?
Yeah.
And allows them to talk about it, and really importantly allows them to break down that barrier. And one of the biggest ways we've done that is a really fantastic partnership with St Kilda Football Club, where we've had 14 wounded guys go down with their families. The club invited us in after they went to the US and saw the way they support their wounded soldiers over there. The individuals go down, get to meet the team just before they run on, and then get to speak to the team as well, which is fantastic.
Right.
And some of them have actually gone out. So three guys have gone out into the centre of the MCG or Etihad Stadium and been introduced to the crowd. And just that level of community support is amazing. One of the guys just said, look, I didn't realise anyone cared or gave two hoots about my story, and I couldn't believe it. It's really changed my whole perspective on community and the fact that people care.
Why is it that there has not been a lot of light shed on this? Because if there is obviously it's evident that people do care and people are emphatic towards someone in an experience like that, but how does it become to a point where it isn't as, and only now it's become an issue where there isn't enough attention in this area?
I think while the ADF has been at war for so long, their focus has been solely on the mission and the end state, and that's achieving their objectives in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the whole Middle East, East Timor. I don't mean to just focus on those as well, because the Navy and the Air Force have been doing a fantastic job up north as well, as far as border protection. Those operations also have a huge impact on the individuals with psychological health issues as well. But I think it's just that focus has been very much on getting the job done. And now we're starting to wind up in the Middle East, starting to have a little bit of an inward search on what the effect is on the individuals who have been doing this for so long. And there's a cohort of I guess younger people and people involved in Soldier On and other organisations that have come to the realisation we don't want to make the same mistake as we did with Vietnam and kind of build up the walls between individuals who have served and people who haven't. Let's break that down. We're all part of the same community. It's just we've done a different job at a different time.
Yeah, brilliant. And just to wrap that up as well, how can people like ourselves or anyone who's listening support Soldier On? How can they? What can they do right now?
Well, as I said, we are quite a young organisation and we're very much focused on social media. So get onto our Facebook and our Twitter, and that will identify all of the opportunities that exist to either just get out and support wounded soldiers. They might be doing an activity, like we've got one guy who lost an arm and an eye, who's going down to do the Mark Webber Challenge, which is a 5-day multi-sport event. So if you're in Hobart, you can go and cheer him along. All our fundraising activities, etc., and just to get out there and raise a little bit of money goes a huge way in helping these guys with their rehabilitation. And tell your friends and buy a wristband or something like that to just show your support.
Fantastic. John Bale, CEO of Soldier On. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
Real
John.
pleasure. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Catch you later. There you go. John Bale, the CEO of Soldier On. You're listening to 2RRR 88.5 FM. We'll be back on the other side of this.